The company for my creative brief was Thor's Coffee. They are a highly caffeinated coffee for adults ages 18 through 25 who are urban and trendy. Here you have the word list that was given. The word I decided to focus on the most was hammer. I feel like that was the most important thing, and that is what everyone recognizes when they hear the name Thor. So it was kind of where I kind of honed in on all my designs. This is my attempt to identify the customers of Thor's Coffee. I believe I have a good mix of different walks of life and different education statuses and everything like that in order to try to get an idea of what the brand is trying, of the market the brand is trying to reach. These are the inspiration pages that I used for Thor's Coffee. Most of these came into play when I was designing the different logos, and then the others were some ideas that I just didn't quite have a good way to get down on paper or into InDesign. Here you have Thor's Coffee's biggest logos. Not only is this brand competing with the drive-through fast food brands such as Dunkin' and Starbucks, but they are also fighting against shelf space on the kitchen counter. Thor's Coffee needs to be the drink of choice as their target market begins to find the brands that they will have loyalty to as they continue on in life and break away from what their parents use and find their own tastes. Here you have the different display fonts. These are mainly the fonts that I used for the titles or the overall branding that I was trying to go for. Mainly the Thor's Coffee logo, word type, all that stuff there. And then these were the info level fonts that I incorporated later on. For the most part, I stuck with Avia Regular here and stuck with the Carta Marina for most of my titles. Here you have the 12 icons that I created. I did end up creating a few more afterwards, but I don't believe I ended up using any part of those, but it was just a way for me to kind of keep expressing, and these were the 12 that I liked the most. Here you have my logo process. This is the first concept. The idea of this was to have kind of the coffee art idea go into the top of a mug to create the hammer, and then from there break it off into Thor's Coffee. I like a lot of these designs, but ultimately this was not what I ended up going for. For concept two, this was a cup of coffee that incorporated the wings that are commonly associated with Thor, both in his mythological standpoint and in the Marvel comics. He has a helm that has wings on it, so I tried to incorporate those into this and do kind of a interesting take on all of that. I did end up liking this design, but again was not the final design I chose. This is closer to the final design that I chose. I did make a few adjustments after these versions going into the final, but this was the third draft. I incorporated trying to use this symbol here that you see in the hammer and the coffee mugs. Ultimately, I just found it to not really flow with the icon. I wanted the icon to be a little more simple. There are details to it, but you look at it, you see a hammer, you see a coffee cup, and I think that makes it pretty self-explanatory. Here's the first test. All of these I redid with the colors once we finalized the colors that we were using for the brand, just so that way I could get a better feel for kind of what it would look like on the page. I did minimal coloring on this, just trying to get the icons on there to see how they felt overall. Here again, I used the second icon. This one I liked it being kind of a little more open, a little less color, it just kind of having that more room to breathe. But ultimately, I didn't feel like it kind of felt as much with the brand, but it was a good showcase of kind of what it would look like. And then this is again the logo I did end up using. I made some adjustments before the final draft, but I liked how this felt on the page. Again, it just to me is the symbol that really works for this project. Here it is in black and white, and then here's my colored logo. The red of the coffee cup is the Pantone color that was provided to me. And then I followed the right complementary color scheme, and I used those colors to bring the logo together using both the light blue and the bluish green, along with the three different shades of red. For my business card design, these are the two versions that I had, both the horizontal and vertical. I did end up redesigning these once we got to the end, and I had created the pattern that you see in the background behind Thor's Coffee on the back of both of these business cards. I really liked the pattern. I think if I were to do it again, I would make that pattern a little bit tighter. I think it's got a lot of space, so it doesn't interfere with the type. But in later works that I did, I think there's just a little too much negative space, and I think bringing it together would have kind of helped fill that in a little bit more. Here you have the letterhead. I went with the logo up top. I did simplify it a little bit based on some of the feedback that I received, kind of just adding the one lightning strike behind it, but still incorporating the brand, making it the focus, but toning it down quite a bit and making it a little bit more of a normal letterhead. Here you have the envelope, which I think is extremely colorful. And then you have all three of them together, um, kind of showcasing the overall brand, um, with the horizontal business card that I did actually end up having as my favorite for this project. Here you have the Pantone, the printing, and then the screen colors, and all their values. This was my first package design. I really liked incorporating these colors, and just kind of getting to mess around with this. I really enjoyed this project. I thought it was a lot of fun. This allowed me to make the pattern and kind of use it as a backdrop, along with incorporating the circles, that I had talked about earlier, and kind of incorporating some more of the fonts that I had picked, and allowing it to kind of be designed, but also not be overly designed. Here's my version 2, where I kind of inverted the colors. I changed up a little things. I added more of the circles. I added more of the different coloring to kind of bring those together, but I kept the handles the same. And for my third one, I kind of mixed them together. So, like I said, I really liked the pattern, so I brought that back. But I wanted to tone it down a little bit since I couldn't fill in the negative space without redoing the pattern. I decided just to put a overlay over where I have the pattern, just to kind of tone it down a little bit so that it's a nice background, and it doesn't really get in the way with the font or the typeface. In both the main viewing panels, the Thor's Coffee descriptor, is not obstructed by the background. It's pretty easy to find and it stands out from the packaging, pretty strongly, in my opinion. And then you have the last one, and I did make two coffee brands. I know they're a highly caffeinated coffee, but even a highly caffeinated coffee would probably end up making a decaf, and I thought Odin Sleep Decaf would be a very interesting take on this brand. Um, and along with some other flavors that I kind of messed around with in my head, I picked like two for this project, and I think that was more than enough. But overall, I'm very happy with how this turned out. I think this looks awesome. If I walked by and saw this on a shelf, not being a huge coffee drinker myself, I would at least admire the packaging, because I think it's catchy and it really kind of sums up the brand right off the bat. And then on the back panel, there would be a section to describe more about the brand and more about the flavors and kind of their process as a whole. But that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for sitting through me rambling for who knows how many minutes.